since you've already got, Monta, you've already got those slides ready and everything. Do y'all
Yep.
want to do it again, or do you want to? Okay, good. Go ahead.
No intro again. All right, I'll wait till you share the screen. I just go to the second slide, binary logistic regression. So this type of testing is used to predict a binary outcome of dependent variables based on its interaction with one or more independent variables. When you have multiple independent predictor variables supposedly affecting a single dependent binary outcome variable, it's hard to know which one of those variables has the greatest effect, or if it's even statistically significant. And comes SPSS to save the day with binary logistic regression with the option to hierarchically, I cannot say that word, input the variables to determine the effects of likelihood for each. So this is Monta. Oops, sorry. Go ahead.
This is a pictorial definition of like how logistic regression model works. Basically, the temperature, what the temperature is, and what the humidity is, and what the wind is, determines whether it will be sunny or whether it will be rainy. So it's just a simple pictorial description of a linear regression model. Here is just an overview of the data set that we collected from. We took it from Kaggle, and it is the upper part is directly taken from Kaggle. It is from the World Health Organization, which estimated like 12 million deaths occur worldwide every year due to heart disease. Half the deaths in the United States and other developed countries are due to cardiovascular diseases. The early prognosis of cardiovascular diseases can aid in making decisions on lifestyle changes in high-risk patients and in turn reduce the complications. This research intends to pinpoint the most relevant or risk factors of heart disease, as well as predict the overall risk using logistic regression. There were 15 independent variables, but we took only 6 out of them. We used smoking, education, sex, hypertension, stroke, and blood pressure medication. And for the dependent or outcome variable, we used 10-year risk of coronary heart disease, CHD. And in all of the cases, binary 1 means yes and 0 means no for the data set. And this is our data set details. We had to prep the data a little bit because there were a lot of data missing. And we eliminated the unwanted variable columns first, and then we eliminated the 157 rows that where there were no data present. So then after we used that data set for our analysis. Now handing over to Chris.
All right. So the first hierarchical binary logistic regression was for smoker and education. And my hypothesis, I use the word semi-lightly, is just what I thought. A person's education level decreases a person's risk for heart disease. The predictor variables used here, of course, are education level and smoker yes or no, education levels 1 through 4. I do want to call out that we combed this data set high and low for what 1 through 4 was. It was coded 1 through 4, but there's no notes in the data dictionary or in there, they don't say anything. So at this point, I was like, oh God, what do we do? So for the sake of the analysis, I came up with what I thought would fit and make sense and what I've seen before. So 1 was high school graduate, 2 was some college or associate, 3 was graduate degree, and 4 was three was bachelor's, right, and 4 was graduate plus. So I did kind of have to fudge that, and there is a question that somebody put in there because you can, and I voted it. So hopefully somebody will come back with the answers. At any rate, represented here are block 1 and 2. And for simplicity's sake, I've just kind of circled all of the relevant numbers. And I hope we have everything correct here, but I'll do my best to explain what's here. So the first thing is block 0 classification table, and the overall percentage, as I recall from class, is, without any analysis being done, we can predict that if we're predicting that no one's at risk for heart disease, we would be correct just 85% of the time, which is actually great. I shouldn't even say just, that's a great prediction, which is good. I guess I'm happy to know that most of the time people are not getting heart disease. The second side is block 1. And I've had to kind of squeeze variables in the equation over to the left because that's the only space I had left. So over in block 1, we showed that at this beginning step, our model is not statistically significant. It's greater than 0.05. And so we need to obviously add some more variables to see where that takes us. The square values here explain variance. And so we're at a very low variance, but there's nothing really to vary because we only have the one single item. So there's not much is told there. Again, this classification table shows no change. And the variables in the equation for smoker added in are with the exponent B 1.1 times more likely to be at risk for heart disease than non-smokers. That's what we know from this chart. I do have a question. Maybe we can address it at the end because I didn't understand how once we added a variable in, how that overall percentage changed not one single bit. So I hope to God that I didn't miss something, but I did it several times. I even tried to find out what that might have meant, but I didn't come up with anything. Before we go further, was that my second page, Mamta? Okay, so this is block 2. Here we have now smoker and education. And as what I recall also, and I looked in the book, I noticed that you had circled the first step, but I believe that on the second one, we compare it what's in the block. Either way, they're all less than 0.001. So the model is statistically significant at this point. The model summary, which has the Cox and Snell, has a variation. We can explain 1% of variation there, 0.008 or 0.014. So I just said, if we rounded, it'd be basically 1%. The classification table, as I mentioned, still, it never changes. It's 85% or 84.9%. And then we move down to the variables in the equation where we have current smoker, education, and those are the breakdowns of the education. In the significance column, everything, the first 3 levels of education are highly statistically significant at less than 0.001. And then the final, the one that's education 3 is 0.034, which is still statistically significant, but a little bit greater. So it doesn't seem as if the difference between those two is, there's much of a difference, I guess, as far as how it, well, no, that's on the right side, exponent B. So the likelihood shown there, you see that current smoker is 1.1, you're 1.1 time, 1.1 times more likely to be at risk for heart disease if you are a smoker than not a smoker. However, that changes at the point where education is added in, and you'll note that the number 0.5, everything's less than 1. So you're less likely to have heart disease. And it increases, this is an increase, which is good because as your education is higher, you have an increase in or decrease. now it's the likelihood not to. So the likelihood going up is better. This is kind of like a tongue twister, I guess, for me. So let's just use the first one so I can say it in a sentence. 0.56, you have a 56 or 57% greater chance of not being at risk than someone who does not have that level of education, and so forth. So 64% and 74%. And I accidentally copied or circled the constant. So I meant to close that out. The next slide, please. So in layman's term, basically, smokers are absolutely more likely to be at risk for heart disease. However, when you run the statistical test, we learn that more educated a person is, the likelihood of being at risk of heart disease decreases. So my hypothesis was correct. However, I added this chart in here because it was driving me crazy, because I was like, it was weird to me that if you're a smoker at all, how could that possibly make a difference? And it does, but it looks here from the counts that we have that there's the non-smokers and the smokers are pretty much neck and neck here. And it's really the education, which there's probably some more, I would say there's probably some qualitative information here that would shed light onto why that education does have such a huge effect, even if someone is a smoker. Maybe they smoke less because they know more, and there was that option, but we didn't choose that as one of the variables, how many packs or how much they smoked per day. That may have been a good one to do. In retrospect, I would have done that. We have one more, but we can skip it because I understand we went with the option B just to be on the safe side. And then you responded that one per person is good. So we'll skip over to Mamta's. Well, hers is next, and then mine, and then we'll skip the last two, if that's okay. Yes.
Go back one slide for me, please.
This slide?
Thank you. Yes, just for a second. I'm just taking a quick note. Okay. Therese, can I ask one clarifying question on this? Just because I don't want to miss it. Is this sentence incomplete, the second paragraph?
Oh my God. I just stopped.
I just want to make sure I didn't miss something.
Yeah, I'll fix that before we submit it. The chart below shows that the counts reduce as education levels get higher, but overall smokers and non-smokers are the same for the most part. They're statistically basically the same. Yeah. I think,
thank you.
Yeah.
That's
Either that
good.
or the
Yeah.
screenshots covering it. I don't know. Could be that too.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Mamta, your turn. Next slide.
Yeah. So I chose blood pressure meds and stroke. I thought of I had an hypothesis that people on blood pressure medications who has had a stroke previously are higher, at a higher risk of having a heart disease. And the predictor variables were BP meds, taking a BP med or not taking a BP med, and another is stroke, had or not had, that is yes or no. And for the first beginning block is the same for like all of our binary logistic regression, because we used 10-year CHD, and that is 85%. And for block 1, I first kept BP meds, and it showed that it is highly statistically significant. Oh,
I think I accidentally flipped that. That's my fault. I'll flip it back.
So I'm sorry about that. And the model summary here shows that our square values explain 1% of variance, and there was no change in the classification table. It is actually not changed for our whole 4 of the analysis that we have done. So I'm also confused about this one. And for this one, people on BPMIDs are 3 times more likely to be at risk for heart disease than people not on BPMIDs, because it was showing 3.010. And for second block, I added up stroke with blood pressure meds. First I added blood pressure meds and then stroke. And there was a little bit of change, but it didn't change the model, as it was still 0.01 and it is still statistically significant. So stroke is still a statistically significant indicator for the outcome. The model summary showed that the square values are here it was 0% and here it's 1%. So we can just say 1% of variance. And then this percentage also didn't change that much. It just changed, like, I think a little bit, right? So sorry. Yeah, it was 84.9 and it changed to 84.8. And for the variables, significant, I'm sorry. In addition to BPMED, stroke is also statistically significant indicator for being at risk for heart disease. And this value shows us that a person on BPMEDs is 2.8 times more likely than a person not on BPMEDs to be at a risk for heart disease. And the likelihood of it increases to 3.1% more likely if he has had a stroke, he or she, sorry. And the output in layman's term is the people on BPMIDs are more likely to be at risk than other people not on BPMIDs for heart disease. Further, when we run the statistical test, we also learned that the BPMIDs likelihood increases if they have a stroke. So my hypothesis was correct, and that's my conclusion. And this is our second.
Is that it? Is that it for the entire presentation?
No, we have more. We're gonna skip the other.
Okay. No, I just want to make sure. Yeah.
We'll skip
Keep going.
Should we do the second one or skip the second one?
We just keep it in the
No, you don't have to. Yeah, I'm only going to grade you on the first.
Okay.
On the first for both of y'all. Sorry, the first for both of you. My bad.
So we're up to slide 18 then for our real world. So I'm just going to read this. At my company, we're always trying to learn exactly which single predictor or set of predictors, best order of delivery for the binary outcome of a customer, which is, did they subscribe or didn't they subscribe, subscribed or not subscribed. Additionally, we seek to understand likelihood of the desired outcome based on the amount of time passed in conjunction with a single or set of predictor variables. So due to the costs associated with the various marketing and sales efforts, understanding the secret combination and being able to predict with a high percentage of accuracy is very important. We constantly utilize these models as marketing and sales campaigns and or techniques change along with the services, change along with changes in our service menu. So our interactive propensity to buy dashboards utilize hierarchical binary logistic regression under the hood, which allows us to curate sales nurture plans to address specific customer groups and segmentation. So I mean, they're constantly doing this based on the customer. What combination, what order, how much time has passed, what size is the company? There's all these different variables that we look at and track, but those change along with the what we offer changes, and trying to understand what will push someone over the edge to be subscribed is important to us, so that we can, if it's something that we give to salespeople, or is there something that we need to add in features, whatever the case may be, this is important to us to predict for our benefit of a sale. All right, that's it for me. Mamta?
So for me, I'm actually currently working as a SEW graduate assistant in Agnes Code, and I'm under the supervision of Dr. Molly, and I handle their data analysis work. And from the previous semester, I have been doing that, but I'm just using advanced Excel right now. But after learning about this logistic regression, I think I would be able to incorporate it in that data set that I'm working on currently. But I'll have to talk to her first. But I think this can be more helpful, because we have like students dropping the class, like we have the data set of like students who dropped the class and a student who didn't drop the class. And like we have a lot of surveys. So we could be able to use this binary logistic regression there. So I think this tool can be valuable for us in future. So I'll just have to talk to her. That's it. Thank you. Question answered.
Questions from the class? And let me remind the class that your grade depends on the questions you ask your classmates also.
Well, these are not hard-hitting questions, but you must have been, because I'm pretty sure you said it. Did it shock you that overall percentage rate just held steady for all of your analyses, like every time, except for that one where it actually went down a smidge?
Yeah, for me it did. And I mean, I kept doing it. I was like, I'm gonna run it one more time, do it one more time. Yeah, and to the point where I was like, this file is not going to be one that Eric's going to want to see. So let me delete all of those. But yeah, I didn't understand that at all.
So follow-up question, I have no idea if this would make a difference. So jump in, Eric, and tell me I'm off my rocker. Did you change the number of iterations? There's a place, I have no idea if that would make a difference, but when I was playing with my numbers, I noticed there's a place where you can change some number of iterations that it runs, and it's set at 20, and you can boost it. And when I boosted it,
no, I remember that, but no, I didn't. I mean, I remember it now that you mention it, but no, I did not do that.
I wonder if would that make a difference, Eric, in what that percentage looks like?
We'll talk about that in a minute.
Okay. And then my last question is, Chris, you said this is happening all the time. Is there statistical analysis built into JIRA?
No, that's not where we pull it. We have our Salesforce. I just am the JIRA person, but we use Salesforce, and we have built other tools that collect data, of, all of our website traffic. We have different virtual places where people can go and try out stuff. And then if we send you, how when you're online and you get, you see something that's interesting and you want it, and then, or if you download the free ebook. So those all have stuff built in that we can see what you read, if you finished it, or if you're interested, did you try it? How many times did you try all that stuff? So every little thing. And then of course we can learn over time. This is all built into the AI to learn, oh, they're about to buy something, like you should probably call them within the next week or something, or salesperson. They know this is the exact moment that you might be able to get them because they're engaged.
That's interesting. We just started doing this today, actually, with our new software system. So we ran our first query on, and it's just a very small number of people in a new program, like how often they're opening the emails, how many times they open them. And all I did this afternoon was just download that file and look at it. And I'm like, dear God, I mean, just thousands and thousands of lines of, and I'm just like, how do you keep up with that? I mean, and we're talking a small amount for us compared to what you're doing. And it just,
Oh, I don't keep up with it. I mean, this is all like in these huge data lakes and whatever, those places that they keep. And then the model. So that's why I'm so intrigued by understanding that there is a formula that they, they use what we're learning now to determine various different things. I don't know exactly what those are for each tool, but ultimately it's all about prediction. But that stuff is running on its own at this point.
I noticed like one of ours, like the general open rate, again, very small amount of people, like 17. The open rate for the emails was like, 5 on this one, 6 on this one. But one girl had opened the same email 169 times, which is fascinating. But I'm like, you screwing up my information here, chick. That's not what it means.
She did not open the same email 169 times. She might have forwarded it on to other people.
She wouldn't have, though, because this was an email from our counselor saying, do you want to make an appointment with me? Like, I think there must be like an error, because that can't possibly be right.
Well, if you think about it, she could have opened up her email client on her phone, and every time that message could have been open. Right?
That's true. I didn't think about that.
In our newsletter, if you subscribe to the newsletter and you forward it to Mamta, and Mamta clicks on it, then that counts as a click for you too. You look like a very engaged reader.
Oh, okay. Well, I do subscribe, so I'm going to start sending it around. I think that's got to be a quirk, because but her second one was 20, and again, the email was not 20 times of information, or else she's just a very nervous applicant, which could be the case.
Gotcha. Any more questions for our first presenter group?
Well, I don't have a question, but because we didn't get to talk about it very long, but I was just intrigued by the fact that I asked Mom a whole bunch of questions about what she was doing, and Molly and Bree, because she had posted a position and wanted somebody. And I was like, how many data analysis students are even left? Because she wanted somebody in the grad program to help with some kind of project. She's, big research project she's working on. So I was excited to know that, you can get past just using the Excel, the advanced Excel, then, and add something else to it. So it's coming home.
Actually, they just have started using Excel. The problem is they used to only use the big books. Like they hadn't put it in the system properly for the STEM field, and then she had just started doing it, and she was so overwhelmed with data. And then she also has like a lot of understanding with Excel, so she wanted me to use Excel, and I was also okay with doing with Excel because I didn't know that much about SPSS, and now I know a little bit more because of this class, so that I will be able to incorporate it there. So that really helps.
Cool. All right. Can I ask some questions now? Chris, education levels 1 through 4, you said you cannot figure out what those mean. The data that you downloaded from Kaggle, did it not have any descriptions or any kind of keys or anything like that?
That's what I'm saying. It didn't have any. So I went on.
It had other description, but it hadn't
the
description of the education. It was not there. Everything else,
okay.
Even they defined what the continuous variables and everything was, but nothing else.
Yeah. And somebody did ask because there's a section that says comments, and it's like, hey, does anybody know? So I went to see if somebody asked and got an answer. and there was no answer. So I just upvoted their question. Hopefully it'll get enough upvotes that somebody will come back and finally update the file.
Okay. Hey, y'all talked about square values. I don't know what a square value is necessarily, but I do know we've talked a lot about R square. So I'm going to make the assumption y'all were talking about R square and not some sort of shape value, right?
Yes, just, okay. They could have been more clear.
Okay.
They were, yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's two there, right? So I didn't also know which ones you were talking about specifically, you know, like square. And I was like, okay, well, there's Coxon Snell and Naval, but I didn't know which one. Be a little bit more specific with that if you can.
Well, going back to your video, you had called out both of them and said, depending on which one you're using, here are your ones. So I went with the same kind of theory, just circle them both. And they were so close to 1%, but these were the values we would.
There's not a big difference. Yeah, not a big difference between. Yeah, just make sure you say the letter R in front of it. That means a lot more than just square values. Just a hint. Okay, smokers, right? 1.1 times. I think the proper way to interpret that is 10% greater chance of a heart disease.
Wait a minute, let me go back to my screen.
Okay. Mom, do you mind flipping back for us?
Yeah.
Thank you. A little bit.
1.108.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
Okay.
that's 10%. 10% greater.
Yeah, okay, greater because the 1 is on the other side. So one is what it is, and the 0.10. Okay. So is that
one
not,
is your middle.
Yeah.
1 is your middle. Anything above 1 is 10%, 20%, 30%, 40, whatever, 3 times. Anything lower is percent lower.
So, okay, thank you, and I will do that from now on. But if I say I'm 1 times, sorry, that's kind of dumb. You're not really 1 times great, because that is existence. I mean, it is.
Yeah.
That makes any sense.
Yeah.
So it's
Okay.
not. Is it wrong, or is it just? Is it wrong per se, or are we just? It
doesn't translate well.
Doesn't translate well. Okay. All right.
Okay. All right. Next, let's go to that cross tabulation that you did with smokers and heart disease, or education in smokers.
A
little bit further. A little bit further. That one.
Mm-hmm.
This one. This is helpful to show, but I wish you would have taken it one step further and showed us the output as the color selection or the cross tabulation, right? So the education level by heart disease, education level or smokers by heart disease, right? Because I mean, that's what we're trying to predict here.
I almost took this off because it really was not, but I left it because I was like, well, it's just information, but I didn't. But now going back to Viz, why use something if it's not going to help you really fully understand? But I was doing this because I thought, what is the difference between, why is the smokers not really seeming to make that the difference I thought it was going to make? And I just wanted to see how many there were. So I had to like lay it out here for myself.
No, I like this. I think I would say take it one step further and do the outcome variable in here as well. I think that would help people understand.
Yeah.
Go back to maybe the previous slide one more time, Monta, sorry. This question that everyone's been talking about, which is, why didn't the overall percentage change when there's statistically significant factors in this? You know how to pronounce that first word on the slide, right? At the very top, the title. You know how to pronounce that now?
I can't say that word. It will not come out of my mouth.
Homoscedasticity.
Hierarchical.
I hate that word.
Homoscedasticity.
It's hierarchical.
Hierarchical.
It's hierarchical. Yeah, Jody got it right the first time.
Hierarchical.
So here's the thing, y'all. Here's the thing. How many participants are in the study?
48.
Don't change the slide. 4,000, right? Yeah. When you have sample sizes that are that large, it's easy for different factors to become statistically significant for the sheer fact that there are thousands of different manipulations going on here, right?
Mm-hmm.
So remember, we've talked about statistical significance for a really long time, but in this class, we've talked a lot about effect size, right? You can have a statistically significant difference or a relationship that's considered statistically significant between factors and outcomes like this, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there's a large effect of that difference. So yes, education level matters in terms of the possibility of contracting heart disease, but it still only explains about 1% of the variance in the total sample. And when it only explains about 1% of the variance in the total sample, block 0 and block 1 aren't going to change very much.
Okay. Whew. Okay.
So yay for statistically significant results, but it doesn't really, I got you, Kara. It doesn't really do much for our outcomes, right? I wouldn't make millions of dollars of funding available for this outcome, right? If you only showed me the statistically significant results, I'd be like, oh, great, let's do X, Y, and Z. If I didn't understand the purpose of this type of work, I would say, well, what's the effect size? How much of a percent of variation are we really explaining under this model? And you say, oh, about 1.4%. And I'd say, thanks for your time, But I'm saying, Kara, please.
I'm just curious if Chris and Mamta had put in like 6 blocks, would we maybe start to see a difference, or 12 of the 15 variables? And is that crazy?
It is.
Okay.
Not really, but it is in essence, because here's the thing. If we're trying to improve health outcomes by making impacts in certain areas, like, I don't know, telling people to stop smoking, right? Or telling people, or recognizing the impacts of blood pressure medications. I'm actually going to come back to that blood pressure medication example later. It fits really well into what we're going to talk about after this. But you know what I'm saying? If we're trying to make changes, how many factors can we really control and affect in the real world? So a simpler model is usually better because it's easier to explain. But if you put in all 12 factors, or variables, you should have a higher percent of the variance explained because you're accounting for more of the differences between the relationships of all of them. However, this one started off really high, didn't it? So there's something out there that is maybe we're not taking into account here that explains a lot of the variation, right? So maybe next step. Future research, right, is what we call it in the scholastic world. But good, I really like this example because it's very down to earth, and I think all of us understand it. You didn't have to tell us what heart disease is, right? So good job bringing in this type of analysis, and that goes for of course, the whole group. And Mamta, I've kind of hit on your stuff too. Sorry. The only thing I wanted to say as far as and you talked about square values and that sort of thing. So yeah, all that's the same. Go to one of the last slides where you talked about rejecting the null. I'm sorry, you talked about the hypothesis was correct, right? That one there. Remember, in statistical analysis, we don't know if our hypotheses are ever really correct. All we can do is reject the null hypothesis that there is no relationship between those variables and heart disease. Okay, does that make sense?
I think I said the same thing. So what is the sentence and you say, like, I know the null hypothesis is there is no effect present, period. And we're saying there is an effect present, but we just say we can.
We reject the null
The null
hypothesis
hypo-
based
okay.
on the, yeah.
Okay.
Good. Everybody good?
Finally got
I
null
have
hypothesis.
like a question, but not like a specific question. I was actually a little bit surprised by the outcome that came up afterwards in the second one. So can I just ask you about that?
Yeah.
Not this one, but this one. Actually, I hypothesize
Oh, sure.
that
Yeah, we can.
men who smoke are at higher risk of having heart disease. But in the like block one, it was showing like statistically significant. But when I added smoker, then the outcome changed. I was really shocked about this one. There was no relation between like smoking, and there was actually more relation to being a man than being a smoker, of being at
Yeah.
risk at heart disease. So it was like really
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. So males are 60% more likely, right? That's how we would translate that outcome here. Let me remind y'all, when Chris showed us that equal, right? Right? Guess what? That means that overall, there may not be a lot of variance in the outcome in smoking because they're pretty equal, right? So yeah, I mean, it's a little shocking, but it may be how they designed the study, right? They may have wanted equal numbers of smokers and non-smokers. Chris, you want to say something?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, because that's what made me do that. It was just it was wrong. Who got scared at the end?
Yeah.
So we started smoking.
I'll look at when you upload your data and all that stuff. I'll definitely dig through it and let you know if maybe something is different or missed or anything like that. But yeah, we'll take a look at it. We do need to move on into our next group because we're about an hour into class and we want to make sure. Ha 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 ha. You gotta say it out loud.
That's all, folks.
No, all right. Yeah. All right. Cool. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. All right. Next.
You guys can see this?
Yes.
Radio. Right. Yep. Jody.
Sure. All right. So we looked.
Can I stop y'all? Sorry, Jody. Can I say one thing?
Yes.
You know what my friends tell me all the time, right?
No.
That I'm a mushroom.
Well, that's going to be very appropriate in just a minute, but go ahead.
Yeah, because I'm a fun guy.
Okay. So we looked at a mushroom data set from Kaggle, and sorry that you stole our joke, Eric. Go ahead, Kara.
Print screen that. Oh no, y'all are in trouble. Jeez, this is going somewhere. Not nowhere public, but yeah.
Oh, well, we don't care.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so what is logistic regression? The official explanation is a model for predicting categorical outcomes from categorical and continuous predictors. In simpler terms, it's predicting which of two categories a person is likely to belong to given their scores on predictors. Next slide. An easier way to explain this is to watch a video from Willy Wonka where it's the egg-ucator, where they rate a bad egg or a good egg. And if you want to watch it, there's a link and we'll share our PowerPoint with you. Next slide. So why is logistic regression important? Can predict the likelihood of an event happening or a choice being made. Makes no assumptions. It's fast at classifying unknown records, and it's good accuracy for simple data sets. Disadvantages are is it's sensitive to outliers and let me stress and try to Google it like we did. The factor that we looked at was whether a mushroom is edible or poisonous. And then the short term is when in doubt, don't eat them.
Oh, this is me. Right, so we looked a little bit at whether binary logistic regression is it the right thing for our data. So some of the assumptions. One, are we looking at a binary outcome? So is our dependent variable a yes or no? And it is. We're looking at edible or poisonous. Are the observations independent? They are. These are hypothetical field observations that were taken by hypothetical people in a hypothetical place. So we're assuming independence. No multi-collinearity. This was a fun one. As I started digging around, what I ended up doing was, we did run it. We have no multi-collinearity. What I did was I took our 4 variables, the ones that Jody and I use, I recoded them into values, like actual numbers, because all of our variables were strings. And then I ran a correlations table just to see. And so I've got the highlighted numbers here. Nothing is really high. So we're pretty safe as far as not having multi-collinearity in our data set. So that was helpful. The next one is having no extreme outliers. So again, with that same information, here's my little uh-oh face, because what happened is, can you see that? It's kind of small. So this is when I ran the plots of, again, those transformed numbers. And we just have these 4 outliers way up here. As I was reading, it said you can either try and clean that up or just make sure to announce it when you're talking about your results. So I'm announcing we have these 4 outliers. Eric says, no, no, no. I tried to understand.
No, I'm just taking it all in. Keep going.
I'll talk more about it a little bit later, because this is particularly about habitat, which was one of the variables that I used in my analysis. So I tried to understand what those outliers were, but I couldn't really make sense of how they impacted the data. So this next piece, number 5, there has to be a linear relationship between the independent variables and the logit of the dependent variable. I don't even know it. All of the things that I looked at sort of boiled down to something called a Box-Tidwell test. Is that right? Okay. And in trying to figure out how to run that, I had a real heck of a hard time. So I just crossed my fingers and went for yes. And then large sample size. We have a little over 8,000 rows. So we were safe there. So then just kind of basics. You're going to check and tidy your data. Actually, on Kaggle, it has all of it has a really great delineator that tells you if you guys saw, if your variables are clear and verified and all that. So that was pretty clean. In our 4 variables, we weren't really missing anything. There wasn't anything messy. So that was pretty straightforward. Make your hypothesis and then launch SPSS. You guys remember all of this. We come into here. So this is an example of mine. So you'll see all these screenshots for that. We have our dependent variable, which is class, which was edible or poisonous. Block 1 for me was habitat. Block 2 was habitat and gill size. Come over here to categorical. I left it as the same. I think, Jody, did you do first or last? We can talk about it when you get to your result.
Or I left it.
Yeah, so we just kind of left it as its default. If you click on save, pick which bits and pieces you want to keep and look at in your results. You remember all of these things, I'm sure. Options. Here's where I was asking about your iterations, you guys. You can sort of come in here and click which bits and pieces you want to see. And over here on the right with your maximum iterations, I noticed all of my results are with this 20. But when I was trying to sort through those outliers, I just kind of started playing with the data and I changed the iterations to 100 and it shifted my numbers, which was really interesting to me. Random side note. I think that's about it. Then you sort of run your analysis and I'll hand this over to Jody who can talk about hers.
Sure. So we wanted to understand whether mushroom class, which edible or poisonous, can be predicted based on bruising and cap surface. So bruising is the color change in a mushroom when it's damaged or bruised, and then cap surface for this purposes, fibrous, grooved, scaly, and smooth. So we showed, or I showed, that the model was can't say that word like Chris, significant. And then our model classified 80% of the edible mushrooms and 65% of the poisonous for an overall success rate of 73, which was an improvement over the percentage of the predictive power of cap surface alone at 58%. My reference cap was fibrous, and this is where I ran this not 2 billion times, but it showed that mushrooms with grooves were 2 billion times more likely to be poisonous than fibrous. Scaly caps were 2.95 times and smooth 4.42. And here's my data, and the bruised or not bruised really seem to have no bearing on it.
That is a gigantic number.
I know, I can't, and I'm sure when Eric looks at this, he's going to find some stupid mistake that I made. And this is what I kept Googling before I realized it's hypothetical data, like what the heck is a groove surface mushroom that makes it so poisonous. But and for future use, I work in admission, so we would, just like we started doing today, look at things like enrollment data, gender, ethnicity test scores, event attendance. A big thing that we look at is, particularly when our campus opens back up, is what counties do the people come from, like, nearby versus far, gender, their preference for program, and then messaging success, like Chris was talking about. How did they open it? Laptop, phone. Is Tuesday better than Thursday? Do people care about graphics, or do they find that bogs down them trying to read?
So I decided to look at habitat and gill size. So the habitat options you can see there were, I feel like there were 7 and I have only 6 listed there, which now I'm a little concerned about. I'll check on the next slide. I must have missed one. Gill size, took me a while to find some graphics of it, but you can see kind of right there in the middle where the gills attach. So if it's got a broad attachment, that's what broad means. And if it's only attached up at the top, that's the best model out of the 3 that ran, because we had the 2 blocks, was the block 2. So you can see there chi-squared was 6 degrees of freedom, and our slightly more than 8,000 rows was 326. He was less than 0.001. Correctly classified 90% of edible mushrooms and 68% of the poisonous ones. So that was nice. Overall success rate was 79%, which was, as you can see, 10% better than habitat alone and 25% better than just the null model, where there were no predictors. So apparently what this data set is telling us is that mushrooms near a path are 12 times more likely to kill you dead than a mushroom you find in the woods. So that was when I went, that's really strange, and started looking back into our data. And I called Jody and I was like, this is hypothetical data. This is not actual. So that was a relief. And then mushrooms with broad gills were 18 times less likely to be poisonous than their narrow gilled sort of brethren. So that was an interesting thing to me, I thought. I find these numbers interesting right here. The significance of mushrooms found in waste. Not significant at all. So I guess we just can maybe ignore that. It's probably the wrong approach, but I find that to be interesting. With the 2 billion number in Jody's results also had this kind of a significance attached to it. As far as me using logistic regression in the future, I'm really curious about the possibility of increasing critical thinking in the general population, kind of outside of academia. And so I'm kind of looking into how to do that through sneaky gamification. So I think this could probably be put to use to sort of assess if, like I said, the answers to a series of questions, do they indicate that someone's more likely using a specific skill or not using a specific skill? And there are several different skills and dispositions that I want to look at. And then as far as app design, I think you can look at the way behavioral design and design elements can influence people's choices, sort of using the app more or less. And then one of the things that I'm also curious about is analyzing sources of information. So it might be possible through a variety of factors to kind of suss out whether a news source is on the trustworthy side of things or the untrustworthy side of things. That's sort of where I see immediate application of this in my world. And then finally, if you find any unbruised, fibrous, broad-gilled mushrooms from a meadow, those were all of the best possible outcomes. You can make this lovely batch of soup.
Yum.
The end.
I'm looking at the recipe to see if it actually specifies those mushrooms.
It does not.
Just mushrooms that are not going to kill you dead.
Yeah,
I
these
feel
are.
like, yeah, your margins are going to be labeled in all of your cookbooks now with the specific mushrooms from the meadow. Right?
Yes,
I
meadow
feel like
mushroom.
we're in the Lord of the Rings or something. Okay, sorry, keep going.
No, you're fine. We're finished.
Questions from the class?
So you said this was hypothetical data that they used on Kaggle. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Because
Well,
I really love mushrooms, so I thought I was going to have all these like mushroomy questions.
I know.
We were blown away. And I'm even today, even though I know it says hypothetical, I'm like, well, there's got to be a basis for how they chose this. So I'm still trying to look at cap surface and poison and gill size and poison and path and habitat.
I noticed there in some of the documentation on Kaggle, I clicked through to, this was donated to the machine learning lab at UCI. And so I clicked
In
through.
1987.
What'd you say?
Yes, 30 years
In
ago.
1987.
Yeah, a while ago. So I clicked through and looked at it, and all of the citations and documentation where they had used this data set, it was all not about mushrooms. It was all very specifically about machine learning. So that was a really curious thing to me. So next time, obviously, we'll perhaps choose actual mushroom data.
No, I can't ask you like it. I mean, I think it's good information, but I really do love mushrooms, but I'm more interested. I think I'm always more interested in, I do want to hear about those big numbers because that would have freaked me completely out as well. And maybe the hypothetical is what skewed it, but I'm always most interested in how you plan to use this in your professions. I think that's where I have a lot of interest in. I was just going to say it's not so much a question, but I was listening to something today while I was outside walking and that I want to share. So I'll send it to you, Eric. I guess it might be something. It's from Hidden Brain, and they were talking about. I mean, I sent it to somebody else thinking that I was giving them something else, but I said, oh, let me listen to it. It sounds interesting, this episode. And it was about making choices and predictions. So I was like, this is crazy, matches the class that I'm in.
That was last Sunday's episode.
Was that it? Did you hear it?
I listen to it every Sunday when we make breakfast in the kitchen.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I was like, what? My brother is trying to do a podcast at work. And I said, I like the format of Hidden Brain. Here's one. So I found one that seemed something like what he would listen to. And I sent it. And then I thought, oh, hey, I'll listen to it because I sent my son in the grocery store. This is not on the subject of what we're talking about, but it is very much, I think, related because it makes me think about how people are using predictions in what we're doing. How, that's, as much as I want to some days not like SPSS or get freaked out about it, or I don't like the numbers and but I do like the idea of what it can tell us, and that you can take information and put it in there and get some kind of result like this that you can, feel confident about. So, yeah.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
have a
like
question
I
for the
said,
group?
the thing today, the information we downloaded today is just an Excel spreadsheet. So and my boss was just insistent, I need to see the open rate on every email you've sent out since we got the system, which was 6 months ago. And I'm like, ma'am, you don't know what you're asking for. Like there would just be so much in an Excel spreadsheet. You just could never look at it.
Or just give maybe some averages.
Right.
So how about a question for the group?
I'm sorry. I don't have a specific question other than you all explained everything so well, and you've put so much pressure on. You've got to have great questions. I have no idea what to anticipate, but
I have a question. Could the 2 billion be right?
We'll figure it out.
Okay.
that's an Eric question. If I asked you guys that.
I would say yes, it is correct, very confidently.
Okay, maybe go back to the
Any
beginning.
other questions? Yeah, keep going.
How far to the beginning?
No, I just wanted to see, that was it. I just wanted to see if there's anything that triggered a specific question for me. I do like how you all did this at the beginning, which is, consistent with the reviews that we've done so far, and showing this as well was helpful. Was there any specific reason you picked this data set?
So we can make the fun guy joke.
Okay.
No, it just looked like it would fit our purposes. But compared to y'all's, I think we were just a little too lighthearted.
Perhaps.
Yeah, I'm sorry, y'all went first. I was like, oh.
Yeah.
My turn.
I was actually firstly interested because you said like hypothetical, and you said 8,000 data, and I was like, how did they get 8,000 hypothetical data? I mean,
We can produce millions of records with simulation techniques, and people do it all the time. We can simulate data files to then use in these types of analyses. One of my best friends used that in their dissertation. They simulated data to run analysis on. So yeah, this is 30 years ago, right?
Quick question though on that, because I was thinking that what triggered my thought was what Kara said something about how she wants to use it. And I was thinking it would be nice if we could create models, or we could say, hey, like how we are using this in our own job, create a fake survey of some sort, and how we would fill it in. But it's like, how would we ever fill it in enough to be able to run the regression? But the question is to you is, when you say simulation, does there have to be a certain amount of actual data? Do you do like 10 and then you say, okay, based on these 10 entries or answered questions or whatever, 150 rows questions for these 10 people, now simulate based off of that? Or can you simulate from literally nothing, zero?
No, you have to set parameters, right? The parameters of, like, if we want to simulate individual participant demographics, we could set the parameters that say random generation of age between the parameter of like 18 and 95 or something like that. You know what I'm saying? But then we could set those parameters, and the randomization of it to either match a known distribution, like the state of Arkansas, where there's a lot of old people. Not like there are in Florida, but you know, like, you know what I'm saying? But you can set that up to simulate essentially, hey, we want to simulate the outcome of an election in Georgia's Senate race in 2020. Boom, we know the population, right? We know a lot about the population. We can go through and see what parameters would cause a Democratic senator to be elected or two, right? That I promise you, there are people doing this with elections. This is one of the elections are a binary outcome, right? Elected, non-elected. So I mean, it's good, and we are getting close to time, y'all. So I need to ask my questions real quick, okay? All right, Kara and Jody. Thanks, I guess, for putting my face in your presentation. I think that deserves negative points because I almost threw up a little bit after seeing myself. No, and all joking aside, you made and I was a little scared when I first saw this and even tried to make a joke. I made a joke about it because I was like, holy crap, like this is gonna be so boring, right? But it wasn't. In fact, it made me question all my life choices as a Boy Scout because I probably ate a bunch of path mushrooms, right? But in all seriousness, let's go over a couple of slides to the outliers. Back. Yeah. Thank you. All right. I liked the considerations for is logistic regression. I agree with Chris. This is nice, right? This is checking off the boxes. Also, the assumptions were good to include as well. So thank you for that. The extreme outliers, you referenced extreme outliers, right? Would you call these 4 data points extreme?
I just went with extreme because they're so far outside. That's the confidence interval bar, right?
75 percentile, yeah.
Okay.
Is there proximity to one another?
I guess they're not outliers. They just.
Did Excel tell you they're outliers, or did SPSS tell you they're outliers?
This is from SPSS.
This is.
Yeah.
It's a little
Yeah.
box one. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's fine. I think you identified it, which is better than not identifying it. So I would say put them back. Did you ignore them, or did you take them out? Did you delete them?
I did not take them out because I did this
Okay.
after. Like I ran all of my analysis and then I was like, I wonder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So your analysis includes outliers.
Yeah. It includes those
Okay.
4 records of our 8,124, I think.
Should we have taken them out?
Let's move on. Next slide. I'm gonna have to walk through a little bit.
This
Okay.
one?
So here, if I could make a suggestion on the presentation itself.
Yeah.
Before you put any of those things in, tell us what we're talking about. Because I have no idea at this point what the predictor variables were.
Sure.
Right?
Okay.
I didn't have any idea. You didn't describe them to us, and that's where I started to glaze over as a participant.
Yeah.
And saying like, okay, I know we're talking about factors related to, you know, poisonous versus non-poisonous, but I felt like you didn't tell us what you're using in your model until after you like bring them into SPSS, right?
That's
so
right.
Go ahead another slide or two.
Yep. None of this. You want me to move forward to like.
Yeah. Move forward until I tell you stop. All right, boom. Go back.
Oh, I do this wrong every time. Here.
One more. That's where you tell us what you're going to look at, right?
Right.
So did Chris and Monta, don't be afraid to say, shake your head yes, but were y'all with me on this? Like, were you kind of wondering like, okay, what are we what do we predict? What are we using to predict? Because I was like, I have no idea what the predictors are here for heart disease. And I'm not putting y'all against each other, but for Chris and Montel, for heart disease, they said from the onset, very, very onset, we're going to look at smoking, education levels. You know what I'm saying? So,
Yeah.
so remember, we have to reintroduce us to those facts, especially if it's a topic that we may not be familiar with, like mushrooms.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, that makes sense. I realized we both had it right before our individual sections. And so it didn't even occur to me, but it does make so much more sense to just before say,
Yeah.
hey, these are all of our, yeah.
Okay. Oh, okay. Go now. Now, Jody, completely understand your applications, right, to your work and your things. Kara, yours was, you said gamification.
I did, and I don't know if that's actually the word I want to use.
No, I like it. So one, I mean, in a way, I immediately, I don't know if anybody else is doing this or not. There's this thing called Wordle.
Uh-huh.
Have you heard of the Wordle? Okay. Wordle is interesting because it's a one game a day, right? That is what it is. It's gamification. And to me, I've played it and I've gotten them all right. I've never not gotten it right. I usually, I don't know, not to brag, but I usually get it like 4 times, four things. But the point is that after I played it for a while, I realized that there's other games. And in my head, I immediately thought, I wonder if people who are good at Wordle, like at least figure out the word every time they play, are more likely to click on those other games than people who, don't figure out the word, right? And that to me is just something I thought about, is like gamification of how we can use games to understand critical thinking, because Wordle is really critical thinking. Like you have to factor in a lot of different things to kind of figure it out. But yeah, also news source analysis. Trustworthiness is not necessarily binary.
Right. There's I don't know what maybe is a word, so there are aggregators out there that already kind of analyze and put things on a continuous scale of,
Yeah, there's a big spectrum. It's a spectrum.
It's a spectrum, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I kind of want to just simplify it.
I gotcha.
Right. Just for a tiny little component of this app, that's generally safe. That's generally not like at the 50% mark. It's over it. It's under it.
Yeah.
But I
so
don't know.
Good job. Good job to all groups. I have 2 things I want to tell everybody. One is a do and one is a don't do. Nobody, and really the do is nobody did it. I noticed that no one talked about assigning the likelihood to individual rows or cases, right? You know how when we run logistic regression, we can save the variables, right? Save the likelihood, which is like 0 or 1, that the mushroom is poisonous based on the combination of factors. Remember that?
No.
Yeah. Huh?
Where?
It's under save in SPSS.
Okay.
Yeah, we went through that. I know we went through that, but no one referenced that today, and how you would use those individual predicted values to, I don't know, decide not to use that mushroom in your recipe, for example. But that's something I didn't hear anyone talk about, right? So remember, saving the variables is also an important step, because it puts that data back into our data set. It puts those results back into our data set. One thing everyone did, and I don't want you to do it on the second presentation. So this is everybody. I'm not picking on anybody. Picking on everybody. Everybody read their slides. Guess what? I can read. I don't need you to read your slides to me. I need you to talk. Okay? Deal?
I'll think about it. Just
You
kidding.
got a couple of weeks to think about it.
I mean,
Sarah, what are you doing? You're getting real close to the monitor there. Are you trying to find the save variable?
Yes, I was just about to say
100%
exactly what she's
looking at-
doing.
That's exactly what I'm doing.
yeah, because we hit save and they do add into like all those rows over there.
Yeah, that's it. That's
So-
it. When you did your homework, you had to save those items, those things. I'm trying to remember the name of it.
So what are you asking? What are you saying? You wanted
Can you
us to
show
bring that up?
us?
Yeah, no, nobody talked about assigning or saving those variables as part of their analysis. And so that was just the last step that I was like looking for, waiting to hear someone say, and no one said it. So it was just one of those little things that I'd like to hear, because in the use of your data in like the next steps, you can use those assigned values to maybe take action. For instance, for Chris, for a subscriber, if my record in your data set says that I am I don't know, 1, predicted value of 1 versus a 0, I'm predicted to be a subscriber. Well, guess what? 2 weeks later, you come back and I'm not a subscriber yet. What actions are you going to take to like figure out why I haven't? You know what I mean? Same thing with students applying to school. Same thing with people eating poisonous mushrooms, right? If Kara and Jody walk along the path and they see all these path mushrooms, well, they may want to contact their local health department and make sure that the poison control office is ready, right? You see what I mean? All right.
Can I?
Did Kara find it under save?
Well, maybe. Is this, are you seeing my
You're-
screen?
Save, standardized residuals, probabilities, and group membership. Yep, Coke's different distance. Yeah, that's it.
So the thing that you're talking about right here, which one of these is it? Is it
Probabilities and group membership. Probabilities and group membership.
okay?
Yeah.
So we had it checked.
Go ahead
We just
and
didn't sort
continue.
of address it.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, it's okay. I mean, again, I'm just bringing up things that no one said.
No, I think that's great because now I'll go back and look at the results and sort of suss out where they are and how to talk about them, which I obviously didn't do.
But did we
Sure.
discuss that in class, like in one of the?
And you did it on your homework. Yeah.
Okay, I'm lost now on that. Then I mean, we hit save, and I remember doing it, but not. I'm saying what it did and the results. Not going to look at that and say, "Oh, here's what we have. Here's what you can do with it." I just was hitting save because that was the step, which I thought had something to do with the syntax.
No.
Okay.
Yeah. No. Thank you. All right. Why don't we take a break? Everybody good for how much time do you want? I'd prefer not 20.
Oh, yeah, me neither, because I won't come back. 10 is good for me.
10. Okay. See ya. And we have been looking at predictors and outcomes, right? Can we all agree to that? That's what our data analysis has helped us to do, right? Determine relationships between variables. But historically, like this class and the last class, up until this point, we've been looking at independent predictors and dependent variables, right? Predictors and outcomes, right? What happens, I never told you this, maybe I should have at the very beginning, but what happens when there are other factors at play? And I know you all, everybody froze. There you go. All right, sorry, I didn't see any hands or heads. Okay. Yeah, so there is definitely what we call mediators and moderators that affect outcomes. So in a mediation means that the independent variable is essentially being impacted by some sort of mediation in between it and the dependent. So the strength of the relationship is typically stronger when you account for this mediator. So let me give you a better example here. So if we were looking at socioeconomic status and reading ability, so students that come from households below the poverty line, slightly above the poverty line, and then above the poverty line, we hypothesize that parental education level, right, is a mediator because socioeconomic status affects reading ability, but it also has an influence on parental education levels, right? Basically, what that means is socioeconomic status alone doesn't necessarily predict a student's reading level, but rather it influences and adds to the impact that parental education levels have on reading ability. So let's just say, essentially, we've got a student from a mid-level socioeconomic status, but the parent's education level is not very high. Then we're saying that that will have an influence on the child's reading ability above and beyond just accounting for socioeconomic status. You know how we've had some weird instances, like with our logistic regression, right? Where we have seen someone that has, let's just say, I'm gonna make it, I'll use mushrooms, a mushroom that for all sakes and purposes, based on our analysis, should be considered poisonous, but its predicted poisonous level is actually, you can eat it, right? There may be other factors at play there. So mediation essentially is the mediator here. In this example, we're saying that socioeconomic status predicts parental education levels. You see that? Sorry, I'm drawing on my screen. So what we're saying is, there we go. Socioeconomic status predicts parental education level, right? But also, that error is just going to stay there, isn't it? Oh well, ignore that error. But also, we know parental education levels predicts a child's reading ability, right? We understand those two relationships exist. Now, the correlation between a socioeconomic status and a child's reading ability is actually greater when parental education levels are taken into account. Okay, so if we don't include parental education levels, our model is actually not really that strong, or maybe it's not as strong as it could be, because in parental education levels, and we know that parental education levels predict reading ability, but also we're making a hypothesis that socioeconomic status has an impact on reading ability. So what we do is we have to incorporate a mediator to better understand the strength of that relationship. So what we're trying to figure out, and the way we identify what a mediator is, well, there's full and partial mediation. Let's start there. Full mediation basically explains the relationship between the independent and dependent variable in so much as ice cream and crime, right? Ice cream is said to predict crime, sort of. Well, if you factor in the summer heat, then that is the mediating relationship. And now we clearly understand that both of them are correlated because of summer. Partial mediation, there is a statistical relationship between the independent and dependent variable, right? But even when it's taken out, that just means that there's a partial mediator, not necessarily a full mediator. Full means without the mediator in that model, there is really no relationship. So here's what we have to check for. Here's what we have to check for when we're running mediation analysis. Number one, the predictor variable must significantly predict the outcome variable, right? Child's reading ability, socioeconomic status, right? Also, the predictor variable must predict the mediator, right? Parental education level, socioeconomic status, right? The mediator must significantly predict the outcome, so parental education level, child reading level, right? And then finally, the predictor variable must predict the outcome variable less strongly, that's a very technical term, in model 3 than in model 1. So essentially, what we're trying to say here is that the predictor variable needs to be, and we need to see a difference, right, between this straight variable of prediction and outcome versus predictor mediator outcome, right? When we see that, that's when we understand that there is some sort of mediating factor. And don't worry, I'm not going to ask you to do this right now. This is going to be one of those where I want you to learn a little bit more about it, and then we're going to walk through the steps of it later on, okay? Moderators. All right, mediators, man. Okay, so mediators and moderators, you're probably going to ask yourself, if you haven't already, how in the world am I going to remember the differences between these? Right, which one's which? Moderators has an O, moderate, right? That's outside. That's an outside variable. That's not in the model. It's explaining the strength of the relationship between an independent and a dependent variable. Mediators help us to account for more of a explanation or more of the strength of the model by including them in the model, right? A moderator merely has an influence or direction basically on the relationship between variables. So if we think, I thought this one might be appropriate because I definitely am on social media to some degree, but I am definitely not on social media like many people are. If I can't sleep at night, I might scroll through Facebook or Instagram, but for only a little bit. Like, it's not what my wife is doing every time I walk out of this room when she's home from work, right? I think it's it's a good escape. But so social media use can predict levels of loneliness, right? Loneliness may go up the more you're on social media, right? That's what we've been hearing a lot of lately. However, age moderates that relationship, okay? Age is not in the model, but rather when we account for different age groups, we might find that 15 to 25-year-olds have higher levels of loneliness than based on their level of social media use versus 26 to 35-year-olds, right? So age is essentially an explanatory variable. Think about it like that. Age is explaining something, right? Age is not part of the model where it's being factored in and saying that social media use is not predicting age, right? Remember what we talked about mediation, right? The independent variable predicts the mediator predicts the outcome, kind of thing. We're not saying that here. We're saying that this is a way of explaining the relationship between an independent and a dependent variable. And so moderators can be categorical or continuous. There is not a one set thing. I know I just used age, right? That's continuous, but we can use age groups as well. What are some examples of moderators that you see in your world where outcomes between a predictor and a dependent variable may differ based on things that we see here on our screen? Think about Monta's analysis. What does she look at?
Meds and the stroke.
Blood pressure medication, right? Specifically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would say stroke.
What type?
Did you want to know which one we thought was the moderator?
No, I was going to elaborate just a little bit more. Think about it. What type of people typically have to take blood pressure medication?
Older people, sick people.
Health status, right? Maybe their health status is a moderator, right? Do you see that now? Like Monta actually did a really good, actually gave us an idea for a moderator relationship here between heart disease, right, and other predictor variables. That blood pressure medication could have been used as a moderator in this relationship. Does that make sense, y'all? Yeah, because I promise you, a 10-year-old on blood pressure medication and a 80-year-old on blood pressure medication may have different heart disease, factors or, likelihoods and that sort of thing, right?
So wait,
example.
So the medication is not. It's just the status of the health status is what you're saying is the moderator here.
Well, I was going to use blood pressure. Having to take blood pressure medication is an indicator of health status.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah.
I got you.
My bad.
So I would then say similarly, I'm just using the exact same scenario in my world would be the dependent variable is if they subscribe, the independent variable is, or variables could be any number of things. I will say one might be that they have a need. But the moderator variable, I would say would be the, could be the, what do you call it? Experience level of the sales engineer.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So if did you say the salesperson or what did you say? Sorry, I heard sales, but I thought you said engineer.
Sales engineer. I said sales engineer, but basically it's a salesperson.
Yeah. So think about it. If all of us were potential customers of Chris's company, right? And we all have very similar factors of whatever y'all are using to measure, but yet I get assigned a sales rep that's brand new to the job, and y'all all get the very experienced Chris Crenshaw who will sell you a bag of air, right? I mean, then the experience level of the sales rep is going to moderate that relationship between us, right? Because all of us can have the same independent variables, but yet our outcomes are affected by Chris or Bob, right?
I have a great one more I just want to go in. Nothing to do with, but something we all experience. Whether you're going to come back to a restaurant or not, the food is great, but the server sucks. Are you going to come? I think that's one. I don't know.
Well, here's the thing.
Or is that the actual independent variable?
Food quality, right? Service is hard to pinpoint because, there's a lot of factors behind that experience with the server too. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's interesting. I'll have to think about that one a little more. I think that's getting there.
Yeah, I might take it back because food quality is also objective.
Mhm.
as well, subjective.
Okay,
not
it's okay.
objective.
Keep thinking. Anybody else want to chime in?
Um, we just learned about it in the data visualization, but I just had a curiosity about like family support and uh, like the rate of a person drinking or
Hmm.
you know with regards to their I don't remember correctly, Chris. We talked about the sorry, I'm lost for words now. So I just want to
That's okay.
know, like, what would be like family support and let's suppose the rate of failing of the students. What would be they would they be a moderator in some sense variable?
Well, what was the sorry, what was the outcome, Manta?
Um, it was to check like whether the students who got the family support uh passed like passed the final exam or not. I don't
Okay,
know.
so
I'm confused.
yeah,
I think Kara can
no,
explain
that's an
more.
outcome. That's an outcome. So the outcome is passed. The predictor in that model is family support. A moderating variable could be any number of things, right? In addition to that, would affect the relationship between family support and passing or what have you. Carrie, do you want to add to that
I
or
was just
give
going to
a
say, I think the way Wendy had it set up in class, it would be age is the independent variable, failing the class or not failing the class is the dependent variable, and then the moderator variable would be family support, because the family support has the capacity to
yeah,
Yeah, so
affect.
I was just
overcome
confused.
age?
Yeah,
Okay.
but then age
Yeah.
can't predict
Okay.
anything about family support kind of situation, right? I think.
Okay, got it.
Thanks, Kara.
Was she talking about y'all's class actually passing the class? That's terrible data, man. I'll have to get on to her. Okay. So I think y'all are understanding moderator a little bit. Here's an example, and this is a real world example. We know it. We fight against this all the time. So we are looking at work experience as a predictor of salary. So we predict that the number of years of experience predicts salary, right? More years of experience, greater likelihood that someone's going to get hired with a higher salary. But we also see a lot of evidence in the world that gender or gender identity moderates that relationship. So a person that is male with 10 years of experience may get offered the same salary as a female who has 20 years of experience, right? There's a lot of gender disparity there. And so this is one of the ones that I always like come back to as an example because I think people understand it, right? And so gender, while you might say, wait a minute, Eric, gender predicts salary. Well, kind of. Really, oftentimes when we look at and we don't just we don't discriminate based on gender or sex or race or anything like that. But generally, it's work experience is what we look at. Like if we have a range of about $15,000 that we can pay somebody, like let's just say 50 to 65,000, someone that's coming in with 20 years of experience is much more likely to get that $60,000 to $65,000 offer, So what we found though, in looking at like corporations, private industry, that sort of thing, this has been the case where gender is a moderator, a very strong moderator between work experience and salary. So again, just another example. Y'all, I know we're getting close to not getting out early. I consider early at least 30 minutes. So your work this week, good job on the presentation. make sure you get all of that stuff submitted to me. If you have, of course, you'll have multiple files to upload. One person in the group, email it to me. Okay, but each of you have to submit your reflection. That's what you submit, is your reflection in Canvas. One person in the group, email me the files. Okay. Deal?
Well, we did our
Chris?
analysis
Separate?
separate, so
That's fine.
Okay.
Go ahead, both of y'all send it to me. Yeah, whatever works.
okay.
But this week's lit review is going to be on mediation and moderation. I don't expect for you to find an article that has both, but if you do, great. No extra credit, unfortunately, for finding one that has both in it. But find an article that is meaningful to you, that you understand, to better understand these types of relationships. This is when, if you find in your analysis that you're, let's just say, linear regression, right? Simple multiple linear regression. If you find the ability to utilize a moderating variable or mediation, you can very quickly increase that R square, right? That variance explained can go up because of the identification of these types of relationships. So yeah, have fun with that this week. Also, in advance, I know I said last time we talked that next week's assignment was going to be this. It didn't happen. I didn't want to, one, not talk to y'all, and two, when you were trying to do your presentation, make you think about logistic regression and exploratory factor analysis. So instead, next week, along with the test, I'm going to go ahead and tell you is this, right? To factor analyze the full SPSS anxiety questionnaire. Okay. Sound good? So make sure you go back and watch that lecture, because I'm sure I've already forgotten what I said. Okay, that's all. Questions?
Oh, you were okay. So you were rushing to get to this point to let. Okay, I was like, we have plenty of time here.
No, I said early. Getting out early means that you're, yeah.
I was
getting
thinking
out.
like 15 minutes or so. I mean, I was really only kind of kidding, but okay, no, I think.
Does everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Oh, it's gonna.
Did
Let's
you
just
show
send
your
on
wife?
that.
I think
No.
you should use that for business cards or something.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Let me. Have y'all? I actually just updated my resume, or Vita, whatever you want to call it. I should put it right here. Let's just do this.
Oh my God.
I went through a lot of mushroom caps. I just want you to know that
sure
is
you
the
did.
fourth one.
Yeah.
And I'll say too, it's very hard to find free mushroom graphics or PowerPoint slides. Like that was
How's
the
that?
worst part of this. That's wonderful.
Oh, y'all are funny.
I'm sorry.
Let's just make it a little bit. There we go. That'll work, right? On page.
It's not updating.
We're not seeing it.
Oh, is it? Oh, yeah, that's right. Because I think I shared the image. My bad. Not the screen. Here we go. How's that?
Oh,
Yes.
that's perfect. God, you would get so many jobs with that.
Right. I mean, along with all my presentations and
Exactly.
workforce. Yeah, all that stuff. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks. Bye. That's what they would say. This guy is not it. So thank you for that. Oh, geez. Oh, man, y'all are funny. Okay.
So
seriously,
wait,
if you have
you've already
questions-
uploaded a lecture about this? Is
About
that
what?
what you were? I'm sorry, I missed.
No, I said go back and listen to the lecture about factor analysis. Sorry. Factor
Okay.
analysis.
Okay.
Yeah. To do the full version of the SPSS anxiety questionnaire. Barry, you look confused.
I'm just looking for the exam.
It's not there yet.
Okay.
It'll be open next week.
I was just making my brain calendar get lined up. So, okay.
Okay.
Got it.
Cool. Good.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else?
No, I
Don't
mean,
forget to compile your Google Doc of stuff for me. Thank you.
I had a quick question about that. While studying how to use Canvas in Clark Atlanta, we had like a feedback box in the Canvas itself, which you can activate for students to put feedback anonymously whole semester. Is that available in Agnes Code Canvas? Because I think it's default for Canvas, so I think it should be available. I don't know.
I don't see it. I'm in the settings now. Let me show y'all what I can see. Yeah, so this is what we have showing. This is what I've disabled. I don't see anything about feedback.
Yeah, it's not there.
Okay. Yeah,
It's not there.
Okay.
It should have been there somewhere in the disabled, but no. Okay.
Cool. And also in preparation for diving deeper into mediation moderation, I've uploaded a mediation moderation step-by-step for SPSS in here for you. Okay. So this is using the process. Remember I told you we're going to use the process add-on? This is the process add-on. Okay. Well, not that specifically, but yeah. So moderation, there it is, process. And mediation should be in here too. Yeah, this is, so yeah, there you go. Okay.
Just FYI for everybody, when I popped on today, the process wasn't installed for me. And so I had to go through the upload and installation process to make it obviously available. And it looks nothing like the examples in the field textbook. So all the screens are different. So thank you for making a new.
Kara?
Yeah.
Yeah, Kara, check it, and or everybody as you look at it, and I'll do this the same too. Check it against this, okay?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll check it against this. What do you think? Is this? I think this looks like what was in the field text to me.
It does. And I'm just gonna, yeah.
Okay, I'll figure it out.
It was different, but yeah, I mean, it's all there, but it's just the wording was slightly different, and I kind of had to, go like this with my brain, but we got there.
Okay. Well, I appreciate y'all's patience and missing class last week. Like I said, we're gonna figure it out. So thank you. Have a good night.
night.
Thanks. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye, y'all.